Okay, it's been a while again, but we're back. This is going to be another Let's Enjoy or Let's Appreciate. This is Pikmin. As you can see, one of my favorite games, and rather than jerk you around this time, I think we'll just get right into it. Big reason why I'm very happy to be doing this one, why it's been on my mind for a while, is this is a game that I enjoy a lot, I appreciate it a lot, I think I could say a lot about it, but it's also one that I feel like it'd be very easy to cover. I don't feel like there are any essential points that are missed which I would need to get out, like with something like Halo. It's not something which is being hideously misread or abused anywhere else in the world, and there is nothing of vital world-shaking importance that needs to be said about it. It's just a very nice piece of work, and yeah, I always enjoy spending time with it, and like with Halo, the best thing that could come of this would be, if you watch me doing this, I would really love to hear that people decide to pick it up for themselves and play it, because it's just a fantastic piece of work for a lot of reasons, and we'll just let it fire itself up now, and I'll talk about what it's got going on as we get into it. And again, not a super serious work, so I'm happy to just talk as we're going. There's nothing you can miss if I'm speaking here. The volume's a bit low, but yeah, early GameCube game. It looks kind of funny, very plastic, and you see there, spaceship knocked by a rock, down it goes. And there's our premise, all you need. If the edges of the screen look a bit funny, this is a GameCube game which I'm emulating. It's kind of widened the screen. I forget exactly how I got this set up, but obviously it looks a bit screwy on the edges, but once we're in, it's fine. Pardon me, I'm sorry, I'm always doing that. It looks basically as it did on release here. Sorry about that cough, that was horrible. Dolphin emulator, I've got it at upscaled 3 times resolution. We're on 720p or whatever it is here. But otherwise, the look of the game is very much intact. I'm just trying to be easy on your eyes here. I don't think that it changes anything fundamentally. Not like, say, a PlayStation 1 game where the resolution really makes a difference. Here it just looks cleaner. But anyway, yes, this is Olimar, the guy you might have seen in Smash Bros. If you never played this. And very basic setup. Our opening cutscene is about 10 seconds long, and now we're down here. We're stranded. This planet. Poisonous oxygen. Oh no. Olimar's got to get out of here in 30 days. Okay, so that's a very fun premise. It brings to mind a few different things. You may have heard me speak about in other places my fascination with both survival fiction and more particularly isekai. I think is particularly interesting because, well, I think they both play on similar fascinations, and this is a Japanese game, so, you know, the Japanese love their stories about being thrown into another world survival scenario with strange, contrived game-like rules which you need to master to become God. This is a bit of that going on, but before that was a thing, and more playing off of, you know, we're shipwrecked, we're marooned here. It's more of the kind of conventional Robinson Crusoe premise where, yeah, we're a stranded sailor. But anyway, let me get into what this game's actually got going on. We're not going to be killing things with our hands. It's not that kind of survival story. What is this? I don't actually know if Pikmin is very famous. This might be, you know, just like, oh, what's this? You know exactly what it is, but I don't know, maybe you really do have no idea. A strange thing has appeared. Dropped a seed. It's the onion. Yeah, what I really love about this game is how this isn't something that really changes if you upscale the graphics. Everything looks kind of... The three-dimensional parts are very plastic looking, very like solid, dense plastic. They look like toys. And then the ground, like look at what I'm walking on. I can zoom that in. You can see that it's almost like photorealistic, like they very obviously, this texture is grass, and I think that that's a very funny and deliberate aesthetic contrast they've worked up there, that where these kind of like, these weird, kind of like, I've heard them compared to the way things look generally, kind of like skate sticker graphics. I think that that's a decent description of what we have going on, just like this weird plastic pop art on top of photorealistic terrain. It's a very novel look, which I don't really think has been replicated in anything else. It's not a look which ages. It's very much... Nintendo have always been good. The GameCube might not have been the strongest thing. Maybe it was, I don't actually know, but the games on it have aged very well because they generally had some very particular aesthetic vision in mind rather than just thinking, we're going to make a realistic thing because, you know, that's just building to be made redundant. Whereas they were making for a very finished picture here. Like, this game looks exactly how it intends to look. They thought of a complete image which could be done with the tools of the time. You know, you upscale it and it looks perfectly exactly as they intended to, just a bit sharper. Anyway, yeah, you may have been reading that while I was talking. It's dropped a seed, and there's some compelling light there. Let's push the button. What the hell is that? Yeah, I think these guys are more famous now. Smash Bros. And also the 4th game in this series has come out, and now they're practically a meme. This is the living creature. He looks like a carrot, and we're going to call him a Pikmin. Here we are, stranded, fighting, yet we're intrigued. This suddenly got fun. Sorry if I'm boring you and you just want to see me get to the stuff. Feel free to skip ahead, just... I have a lot of thoughts in my head as always, and as always, I go into this thing thinking, ah, gee, do I have anything I could possibly say today? And then, you know, I find myself having so much I could say that I just lose focus on the game. I'm going to try not to let that happen. You're meant to play this game with maybe a bit of urgency, and also it's just very interesting, and you all know how I think. I'm probably just iterating upon myself after a certain point. So, what the hell is Pikmin? This game... Yeah, we're a shipwrecked spaceman thing, alien. And... what does he think of me? Yes, we've just gotta play around with him and just figure out what the buttons do. I do that and he stops following me. I do that and he comes back to me. Pick him up, throw him, we're doing great. Sorry, let me just check something real quick. Did that adjustment I made to the sound stick? No, it did not. Let me... My computer crashed while I was setting this up for a recording, and the only real change I made was I turned the volume down. I wasn't doing much then, so it probably wouldn't be too loud, but I did just turn the volume down so you'll be able to hear me better, especially as I start doing more stuff. But yeah, speaking of stuff, what do we do with this guy? And the game says, just throw him around and see how he reacts to trying to do different things. Well, yeah, here you can see him just, he tries to keep up with me, and I can throw him at stuff and whistle him back. And yeah, it's pretty cool. It's something you would have picked up on if you were listening to the Halo thing or other stuff I've done. I like it a lot when a game feels really alive. This is one of my favorite games because it was basically built around the idea of, okay, what can we do with this new machine we've built, the GameCube, that we couldn't do with the Nintendo 64? This was very much a tech demo game. Like a lot of the GameCube, it's really interesting. People don't think of Nintendo as like a tech-pushing, boundary-pushing, oh, their games are just flashy tech demos company, but the GameCube had a lot of very early titles which were very ambitious and all about showing off some new possibility that was unlocked by the hardware. And yeah, tech demo does not have to be a dirty word. It's just a question of, well, what are they doing? Tech demo became a dirty word because it became synonymous with graphics stuff. Basically, tech demo means the Order 1886. It means something which has no real artistic reason for existing. It's just a craft piece. And, you know, graphics are not a very interesting craft. It's not very interesting to me that some insect at Valve worked out a more realistic way to model the flow of water, or that, you know, some poor bastard who worked on the Order 1886 spent like 3 years of his life rendering ferns and dust particles. Very tragic stuff, but no, Nintendo, they are very good at their tech demos. Sorry, let me just make sure let me just flip up my thing. I get paranoid. No, we're still recording. Yeah, so anyway, Nintendo, they had a really great age of tech demos, and all of the kind of flagship games for the GameCube, they were really trying to do something that they couldn't do before. The ones I particularly have in mind are Pikmin, Super Mario Sunshine, and Luigi's Mansion. They are very particular, doing very particular things that couldn't be done before, and they were advanced conceptually rather than just technically, so I would say they're actually still really interesting for a lot of reasons. Like, for one, it's just that Nintendo level of craft. Yes, it's very beautiful, and it's got that fascinating GameCube look where they're very interested in kind of playing around with artifice, and there's this look they have, I describe as plastic here, and they'd very deliberately contrast it with relatively realistically rendered flowers. Like, look at that, and then look at the Pikmin. You can see that, like, his surface is very... it lacks detail, it shines. He looks like he's made out of plastic or something, and so does Olimar. I think it makes them look three-dimensional for the same reasons that I described in Halo, where it's this sense of fidelity, the sense that every detail about it, like, it looks like it's made out of very few solid shapes. You get the impression that each one could actually bounce off of the terrain in a very solid way. It's a lot of subtleties of animation and rendering which make something feel like an object, even though it's, projected onto a flat screen in a world which you cannot touch. There is no physicality in virtual space, of course, but you can sell it very well, or you can even not sell it if that's what you're trying to do. There is no right way to do this. Again, it's all about what you're trying to do, and yeah, the trouble with the typical visual tech demo game is that it's not trying to do any particular thing. It's just taken for granted that, realism is the coolest damn thing you could be doing, and yeah, the swan song of that whole waste of effort, I think, was the Order 1886, but, I say that, but Sony still apparently sells consoles on the, whole thing of, whoa, look at our ferns, look at our obnoxiously face-scanned, ugly actors pulling ridiculous faces in our absurdly bad melodrama TV show games. You know where I'm going. The Last of Us 2 was basically an iteration of that again, where it's technically impressive, and what that means is just, look at all this, like, muddy rainwater we're rendering on the protagonist's face. Yeah, that's nice, but it's not really a style. It's just, at this point, just make TV, and, go figure, naturally Neil Druckmann does go onto TV. He would very obviously kill his firstborn to get into TV, or more particularly as an artist, he did kind of kill his firstborn. He killed The Last of Us by making it into a TV show. The Last of Us, the game, is now just like the alpha for a TV show or something like that. It's a tech demo that you use to sell what you really want to do, which is the premise on TV. And they got there. Does that make sense? Do you see where I'm coming from? Whereas, like, relative to this is progress in the sense of, like, look what we can do. We can create this little three-dimensional man and his little three-dimensional underling, and just to show you that this is an aesthetic flourish rather than just us doing stuff in a computer for the sake of it. Here are these relatively more photorealistic flowers which they are going to run through for contrast. You can see very much this is something the Japanese have always been very good at. The comparison in film which comes to mind is how Mamoru Oshii uses 3D animation incorporated alongside 2D and live-action footage. There is no iteration of, like, in the West, we basically killed 2D once we got 3D. Like, oh look, we've got the new thing now. It wasn't seen as a tool which can do its own things for better or worse. It was, okay, it's the new thing, we want the new thing, so buy old thing. But yeah, having access to both, not killing both, and using both within the one work for different effect, that just demonstrates a level of conceptual awareness and lateral thinking which is completely lost on Westerners for the most part, unfortunately. Like, it's very much not just, like, for the sake of it. It's very obvious what he's doing, what feelings he's trying to evoke, and why. If you watch a movie like Ghost in the Shell 2, it's very much... Again, artifice is on the minds of the Japanese a lot. They're very good artists, very self-aware artists, and yeah, it's how do you make something look unreal or stand out in a entirely unreal virtual, its images on a screen, none of it's real. How can you create, and all of it is drawn by hand? You aren't even giving like a relatively direct transmission of reality like you are when you were shooting film, actors on film in live action. So the effect of CG animation, the three-dimensional computer generated, on top of 2D, it's like another layer of artifice, it's depth, it's layers of unreality, and playing with that is very, very interesting. Mamoru Oshii's, what is it called? Avalon is also brilliant. That one uses live action and CG together as well. Very interesting artistic effect, and what's going on in that movie is, pardon me, I think it's very interesting, very forward thinking that in an age where, yeah, CG was taking off in American movies and it went from the thing you do for like impractical like gimmick effects you couldn't do before to just like an easier way to blow stuff up. It very much stuck in the Japanese mind as the way you do like weird things. It's a particular tool for particular effect. I mean, I don't mean to be too unfair. There were, white people making interesting use of CG. There were people who understood it as, well, it's this weird thing, you can do cool things you couldn't do before. But on the whole, I would say that, again, it comes back to the Japanese just have brilliant minds for multimedia in a way that we don't, tragically. So yeah, even in video games, the point is maybe more obvious in animation and film, but yeah, in video games as well, this is just a very nice example in my mind of, yeah, just lateral thinking, which has aged excellently in a game. They had the power to do new things, and they made something which lasts because it is, yeah, it's a pretty striking aesthetic vision rather than just an outdated step towards rendering live action in a computer, which has always struck me as pointless and idiotic. So naturally it sells incredibly, it's a console mover. But I said I was going to focus on the game, and just look at me go. The point I wanted to get into, yes, was this is the tech demo game, and yeah, that's the tangent we'll get back to. Super Mario Sunshine, all about liquid. Sure, some insect at Valve models the way fluids move far more accurately today, but in terms of actually interesting things you can do, a game built around liquid, Super Mario Sunshine is still probably the most striking. And Luigi's Mansion, it's a game about, on one level it's an exercise in just making a game where everything looks like this spaceship, Olimar and the Pikmin. It's all about, like, pretty much a complete realization of this kind of plastic toy aesthetic. The way the game is presented, camera angles, scene transitions, it's very much selling the idea of, like, a game set in a toy house, basically, but also the kind of new tech thing, in addition to being able to render real enough for this level of unreality, which becomes a style. The other thing they have going on is it's kind of modeling air and, just the motion of air and suction in space and how different things interact with that. It's a game about physics, you might say, air physics. It's the game where Luigi has a vacuum cleaner that can also blow like a leaf blower. And yeah, it's just a game where I'm sure someone at Nintendo, how that came to be, they thought just like, okay, what are all the new things we can do? One guy says liquid, that becomes Super Mario Sunshine. Another guy says we can model like things being blown and pulled around by forces in the air. And like they model a vacuum cleaner and fabric being pulled by it, and that becomes Luigi's Mansion. And the other, in my opinion, most interesting thing they think is we can model more stuff now. And yeah, that became Pikmin. Why I was holding off was Pikmin is the game about more stuff, and let me show you. So the big experiment I was holding off on with this guy is what happens if I throw him at those weird plastic flowers. He picks them up and runs them over there. Sorry if my voice is getting raspy, it's a bad instinct I have in front of the microphone. And yeah, you just saw what happened there. Astonishing. Onion sowed more seeds. Needless to say, we must study the Pikmin more. So we just put something in there and it spat out 2 more. What happens if we get another one? He's gonna run back to me. Did I do good, boss? Yes, and whoa, now there's 2. Whoa, now there's 3. And he just brought back another one, so that'll be 5. And you can see where this is going. This is what Pikmin is. If Super Mario Sunshine was the liquid game and Luigi's Mansion was the air game, then this is the numbers game. Someone at Nintendo thought, how much stuff can we render now that we're on discs and, you know, computers are getting so much more powerful. This isn't like the PlayStation 1. We aren't going to have gigantic load times. It's not going to be looking like a game we could do on a cartridge. This is the game of the future. And, well, if this goes on, you'll see exactly how much we can render, but they knew before Pikmin was even a thing, actually. The story behind this game that some people probably know, I'm sure idiotic YouTube videos which talk about lore and factoids about these things have probably told you by now, if you're into that Pikmin actually is a reworked tech demo, quite literally. It was something that they made just to show off the power of the GameCube, which they then found a way to rework into a game. I think the tech demo was called something like Mario 100 and something. The idea was, I mean, what the tech demo was, you can look this up, just GameCube tech demo Mario's, something like that. Nintendo had just this little 3-dimensional shape, whatever it was called, just a piece of terrain, very artificial looking, and 100 or more little 3D rendered Marios just running and jumping around over the top of it. And I think that's still a fascinating demo because the point is, it's like what I talk about with Halo, it's like what I talk about with Myth, just like, this isn't a cutscene or anything, this is being rendered by the machine. Look how much sheer stuff we can do at once, and it's not slowing down or anything. And they weren't bullshitting, this game can have a lot of stuff on screen at once, all moving, and it all runs perfectly as it's meant to. And yeah, that is the tech demo flourish of Pikmin. That is what it sold on when it was new, and something which, again, is still so conceptually novel that it makes this game interesting to me over 20 years later, and it just got its 3rd sequel, Pikmin 4, and that sold better than Final Fantasy 16, which is pretty interesting to me because this was pretty, not obscure, but not amazingly successful for a long time, but yeah, I think people are so starved for anything of interest now that it has overtaken the competition, not so much because people learn to appreciate it as because everyone else, I think, frankly just decayed. And yeah, this didn't decay because it wasn't just like STEM junk being made for the sake of it, it was always a vision, and that's always more interesting. There's just so much to enjoy here because it's all growing out of people playing around and seeing what's possible rather than iterating on what exists for the sake of it. And so I'm going to progress this a little bit now. As you get more of these guys, they can do more stuff, and there we go, some movement. Push the big box out of the way, we can do more stuff. There they go. Curious as children. Form groups to perform tasks, isn't that fun? And there's our instructions if we haven't figured it out yet. And there they go, aren't they happy? And there's our engine, so we're gonna live. I have more stuff to say about how this game came to be, I'll just let some things play out for a minute. There's the engine, stroke of pure luck. And how will we get it back? Any ideas? Well, I think you might know, but there's more work to do. So each one of those is 2, we've got 14 at the moment, you can see those numbers at the bottom. I don't know if the game ever explains those, but it's pretty self-explanatory. We are just going to get more and more of these, and you'll be able to see more and more of the awesome power of the GameCube. You could say it's quaint now, a game based around numbers and such, but is it really? Like, if I really want to play a game that's about scale and massive amounts of moving stuff I can interact with in, you know, more or less complex ways, if Pikmin has, like, aged and become silly or quaint, I just think, like, no, it hasn't. You just can't say that. There's no case of, okay, what is the, like, cool, hardcore Pikmin thing that's actually, like, better than this? It's a very, again, like, as I was saying, it's novel because it's, you know, it's a tech demo in the sense they wanted to see what they could do. Yep, simple tutorial. They wanted to see what they could do, but it's not a thing which was existing solely for that. Like, a tech-pushing game for the early Xbox, a lot of them no one will probably ever play with any serious interest again because, again, they only sought to be steps in the process of, you know, the raw march of tech. It's not basically something which stands on artistic merit in addition to being technically impressive. And by artistic merit, I just mean, basically, can I talk about it in the sense I'm talking about this? Did people put personality and vision into it? Is it an expressive work? Is it a work in which I can see the tastes of an individual or a culture playing out in front of me? Can I actually make an interesting reading of humanity through the work? Well, I'm me. I can read humanity through anything. It's kind of what I'm into, but, you know, am I going to be, like, dissecting them like some gross dead animal, or am I going to be enjoying it like art? And yeah, frankly, a lot of games from the era I can only really enjoy in the sense of, like, ew, what were the Americans doing around this time? But, like, this is not Vex. This is much more interesting. Poor Vex, why did I decide to pick on that game of all of them? Just a failed game that's not very interesting, but yeah, lots of stuff where people are just kind of throwing ideas around for the sake of it and no one's really feeling it. Just games being made because there's money there, but no, Pikmin is very... As I said, Pikmin grew out of a conceptually very advanced idea. Like, Vex is basically people trying to make Banjo-Kazooie for the Xbox, and it doesn't go very well because, yeah, in addition to being a played-out idea, there was, like, no inspiration. It's just playing Mad Libs with various trends, trying to hit upon a success, and yeah, I think what I found looking into all kinds of things is that it's pretty much impossible to succeed that way. There's always some, like, cool, vital driving force of an actual human being behind anything that takes off. And then the people who think like that come later and ruin it. But because Pikmin is Japanese, it appears as though that hasn't happened. Again, many sequels, and they appear to still have integrity, but I only played the second. Maybe I'll get around to 3 and 4 eventually, who knows, but 2 I also have thoughts on, and I consider that a very interesting work for reasons I'll get into way later. As you can see, this story is very light, and it's not really saying a lot. But between 1 and 2, which came out not too long after this, there's actually a pretty coherent little story arc which very neatly runs over pretty much everything you can thematically do within this kind of, like, abandoned in the wild fiction. It's a very neat little understated narrative arc which just says some very simple things which are very coherent and work very well within the context of a game, what this is about, why we're playing it. It's a neat little meta story that mostly plays out over Pikmin 2 about, you know, what's interesting about life and the nature of work and survival and play. It's very, very interesting, but I'll go into that properly later. Just for now, I just wanted to get that out, that I do think that on a story level, in addition to looking neat and just having neat stuff going on, Pikmin actually does become interesting. And here's our little journal entry. We get one after every day, and they actually change based on what we're doing, which is neat. Sorry about that, again, I'm coughing. But yeah, I intend to just take this pretty slow. Dolphin is missing 29 parts. He's got a family on his home planet. That's kind of what a lot of the plot riffs off of in 2, the fact he has a domestic life to go back to when all of this is done and so on. There is a forest we can explore tomorrow. Again, it's based on days of stuff, so that could be a very easy way to structure the recording of videos if I wanted to do that, and I might do that. This one was particularly long, though. That was the tutorial area. Time does not pass, it ends when it thinks you've learned enough, so the rest of the game will keep me on a schedule, which might make me a bit more coherent, less meandering. We'll see about that, I suppose, but yeah, there was maybe one last thought I wanted to get out, which is just that if I... So here's our... You can see what it is. It's just a nice, pretty screen. You can see all the places we're eventually going to go to here, and... Yeah, what was that last thought on my mind? Yeah, this just grew out of... Well, you've heard everything I've got to say. This is a very cool game. It grew out of a tech demo, but it's a tech demo which is also a very complete and satisfying aesthetic vision, or art, if you want to call it that, pop art. It's just very pretty, very novel. I've talked about conceptually why I find this game interesting for this whole time, and didn't really show you anything it's got going on, but don't worry, the pace of the game will force me to do that on day 2, and I think I will make that the next video, and I'll record that in just a minute. Hope this one got your curiosity at least a little bit. If not, sorry, I know I do talk a lot, but if at least one of you enjoys this, it was worth it, and it gets me rolling again, and I like to be rolling. Happy to be back onto this, and I'll do a real video where I actually play the damn game. Yeah, again, right after this. So, thanks.